Hi there everyone, my name's Alison Reeves. I'm a registered clinical counselor in private practice in the Oceanside area of BC on Vancouver Island. Now, I'm going to talk about health. When I developed my chronic illness back when I was 25 years old, I had a really hard time grasping what it was like to still be Alison, still be healthy, still be a productive member of society, still be a person that deserves to be alive even, while I had my disease. And I'm just wondering, by any chance, if you're running into that yourself. You know, whether we're in our 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, I was in my 20s. So no matter where we are in our life, it really strikes us as being horrid that this has arisen, because there's nothing we could really have anticipated. We might have heard of Parkinson's, we might even have other family members with Parkinson's or have had friends with Parkinson's, or MS for that matter. But what happens is that this is uniquely yours. The disease is simply the disease, and the way it crops up in you is simply because the way it crops up in you because of your particular genetic structure, your particular psychological structure, all sorts of things. So what bothers you might not bother somebody else, even though you might have the same symptoms. Now, what I really find valuable when we live with chronic physical illness is to develop a way through it, because we can't get rid of it. That's what the chronicity factor is. And I developed something a long time ago that I found really helpful for myself, and I'm wanting to actually offer it here. You might throw it in the garbage, or you might find it useful. What happens is, this is a model, so you can make it yours. I'm going to show you what mine was and how it helped me keep on track with what I was doing with my mind and with my behavior. With my conversations, perhaps with my language. Health, I used as an acronym, and it required an H, an E, an A, an L, and a T, and an H. And all of those things really spoke to what was important to me. If I had those things, I could consider myself healthy, even if my body was riddled with disease. Now, like your disease, Parkinson's disease, MS is a central nervous system disorder, so it really screws up your thinking, screws up anything actually that your central nervous system experiences, which is an awful lot, have you noticed? So what I did for me was I wanted to avoid everything about the disease. I wanted to not make my belief in myself, my self-esteem, be dependent upon my disease being nice. See, diseases aren't personal. They just exist. They just are. What we do with them is extremely personal. What we believe about them is extremely personal. How we handle them is extremely personal. So this particular video, this 15-minute video, is talking about health as an acronym. And what I did was I realized that if I had happiness in my life, that would be a good life. If I had energy in my life, that would really make my life a lot nicer. And if I had acceptance in my life for what life had given me, that would be good. And if I could have trust again, that too would be helpful. And then H for hope. Now, all these things are trying to not be focusing on the external, but focusing on the internal, okay? As a mental health practitioner, I want you to know that it's really important for your sanity to be focusing on what you think, what you feel, what your sensations are. It's your interpretations that matter. And when we have central nervous system disorders, we can run into paranoia and anxiety that are disease-induced. However, what happens is that we have a huge area that we can work on, which is how we respond to that. So if I may, and I hope this shows on the video, if your anxiety aspect of Parkinson's is right here, your experience of it might be that big. Psychologically, you have this amount of room that you can actually change. You can actually ameliorate, so you can improve that. So you really get down to the simple anxiety that's the Parkinson's part. I find that sort of understanding of things remarkably helpful. And I've worked with over 2,000 people over my career so far, and I gotta tell you, it's really helped a lot of people. So I encourage you to think about it. So according to your value system, what is really important for you if you were considering yourself healthy? And it's not on any externals like, physical health or money or somebody who loved you intensely or anything like that. If it wasn't anything external, what is it for you that would symbolize health? For me, it was happiness. So I recognize that life for me is valuable if I'm happy. So if I'm morose and all that, I'm morose. However, that doesn't speak to a healthy life. And I really wanted to find out what would be psychologically healthy. By the way, when I developed this, I wasn't a therapist. Okay? This was long before I became a therapist. Because I developed MS when I was 25, and I became a therapist when I was 39. Get that? Yep, 1994. So this is a lot of work that I did on my own when I was feeling better. I also took 10 years off from my life to learn how to live better with my MS. That was a really big deal. And I was very happy that my former husband actually was willing to do that with me. And here, what I'm wanting you to think about is psychologically, what does health mean to you? So it's all in the internal, regardless of whether or not you have difficulties with your Parkinson's, okay? Regardless of whether you have cognitive difficulties with your Parkinson's. Because this is the part about learning how to live better with your disease. You're a human being, first of all. We're going to stop at this point because my cat is here. So this thing that I developed, really, I've carried on with it. So since 1994, well, that's when I got my degree, but my goodness sake, I developed MS in 1980. So I've been still moving with this. So for me, it's happiness, energy, acceptance, laughter, trust, hope. And the happiness part, I want you to know that psychologically, if you can interrupt moments of morosity or being morose or being grief-stricken really quite well. And it's not discounting, being morose or the horrible things that are going on perhaps with your Parkinson's and with your life in general. However, you can interrupt it when you realize, oh right, but I remember this funny incident. And for me, that always worked with animals. I mean, like, I'm a sucker for animals anyway. I have a menagerie, and so what goes on is that if I remember a funny moment with a cat or a dog, excuse me, even if my life is bad, even if I have MS, or even if I have Parkinson's, or even if I have ... I can have happiness, because for a brief moment, what's gone on is just a surge of utter delight inside when I remember the antics of something. So it might create laughter, but it also creates that wonderful sense of happiness, just of being alive and of having witnessed something, having watched something. For a lot of people who have kids, and I don't have children, but for a lot of people who have kids, they also have those fond memories of when they first saw their child, or when they saw their child graduate, or when they just held their child for the first time, or anything like that. And it's really lovely because those moments are real. Our memories, however we hold them, are very precious for us if they are positive. So happiness was my number one. Then I went to energy. Now, seriously, with my MS, I got flattened. I don't know how many times, got hospitalized, I don't know how many times. And energy, I'm still extraordinarily stingy with energy, as almost everyone around me knows. And so I encourage you to be thinking about what gives you energy rather than depletes your energy. So for me, if I was choosing anything in my life, what I wanted to do was actually ask myself, is this going to give me energy or take away energy? And I'll use this for an example. I have had such a wonderful thought about doing this sort of work for a long, long time. I wanted to do this. Now, I'm doing pilot studies to find out if it's going to work, you know. I mean, I've been a therapist for a long time, and I just really think something needs to be out there for people when they need it. I know I sure need to tap into things, you know, 3 o'clock in the morning or any time. I just needed it. I didn't want to have to wait around for an appointment or read a book or have to figure it out. I just wanted help when I wanted it. And I've also been a caregiver, and I've wanted help when I've wanted it. So what I'm doing here right now with these pilot studies, this gives me energy. No, it doesn't matter how much time it takes for me, because this actually just infuses me with energy. I just love it. This is wonderful because I'm actually doing something that's very what's the word for it? It's value saturated for me. I'm thrilled to be offering this because it's needed. You guys, all of us who've been living with chronic physical illness, it's the pits. And we have to figure out how to live our lives well despite the disease. And if we're a caregiver, it's horrendous watching the person we love having a hard time. I mean, let's face it, the reality is that anything that gives you energy is pretty well a good thing, unless it's cocaine, you know, unless it's illegal or something like that. What happens is we want to stay away from, not avoid, but actually choose not to engage in energy depleting activities. Now, I've totally messed up on my timing on all this, so I don't even know where I'm at. So what I'm hoping is that I can actually go right into the acceptance mode. Acceptance is something about the whole notion that even if we hate the Parkinson's or hate the MS or dislike it or are frustrated by it or wish it had never existed, we simply accept the reality of it. Because guess what? When we do that, we tend to not override it. Like, this will be interesting for me. I hope it is for you too. I chose my profession after I developed MS, and I actually chose a profession that would give me a lot of money for the least amount of work with something that I truly believed in. Okay? Now, when we choose to do things like that, that means we're actually acknowledging the reality of the MS. And I gotta tell you something, your Parkinson's exists. There's no magic wand to get rid of it, otherwise we would have gotten rid of it a long time ago. Drugs might be able to help, therapies might be able to help, however, it still exists. So what we want to do is look at the human nature of it, of just being human, right? And then on top of that, you've got the disease. So the next one for me was laughter. I knew that if I could get myself giggling, life was going to be better. Even in the midst of it all, I discovered that I could laugh. And I might not have been able to actually laugh because my ability to articulate was really missing at various points in time with some of my attacks. Laughter just makes you feel better. Now, I know with Parkinson's it runs into all sorts of problems with your ability to be able to move and to be able to, the stiffness part. So if you can laugh, I want you to know that you can even laugh internally, okay? And that's a good thing psychologically. And no one talks about that sort of stuff. Come on now, I'm a therapist. This is what I do. I'm not just talking about the external expression of laughter. You can be internally laughing. The next one is trust. And trust is a big deal psychologically because trust is one of the first things we learn as little babies, little infants and things like that. We learn how to trust our bodies. And guess what? With a chronic disease, trust goes out the window. So what I want you to know is that trust is very helpful. Whenever you feel the trust, go with it. Okay? Simply go with it, because it's very precious when we have it. And it's also important. And then the last one was hope. And it wasn't hope for me that MS would go away or that a treatment would work, because that means that it's externally focused. I had to have hope that I would be Allison again. So whatever your name is, I want you to be doing everything you can to be the most George you can be, the most Stephanie you can be, the most Allison you can be. Whatever your name is, that's what to be, okay? And that brings health. So thank you very much. I have no idea about the time because I totally screwed up on my stopwatch. Allison Reeves, Registered Clinical Counselor in lovely Oceanside, British Columbia. Thank you. And please use this.